Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Lynn O'Rear. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees, and you might also know my name as treasurer of the church. I won't ask you for money today. Just a little bit later. Okay. I'm really pleased to be here with you this morning, and especially to welcome Reverend Alan Harden. Some of you know that he was a longtime member of this church, probably since 1990 or so, raised his family in this church, and decided upon his retirement from a research career to become a Unitarian minister. He now serves at the Beverly Church, what I know as the Castle in Beverly, and all of you should go out there sometime to visit because it's quite extraordinary. And I'm very fond of it because my parents were there when I went off to college. They adopted the church out in Beverly and replaced us, all of us. They had a new family, and that was the church. So I'm real pleased to have Alan here today and to be the worship associate. So now I do the formal stuff. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Chicago, in person, those in person here, and those at home on Zoom. Hi there, I'm often on Zoom myself. I'm honored to lead you in worship today, along with our friends here, Alan, Adam Odell, and Liz MacClarence. First Unitarian Church has been a home for progressive religion in Chicago and beyond since 1836. The church sits on the western shore of Lake Michigan, south of the Chicago River. We honor the indigenous peoples for whom these are unceded ancestral homelands, as well as the diverse and vibrant indigenous American communities who make their home here today. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but the values we share and the mission to grow our souls and heal the world. Whether you just stepped into this church for the first time or for the 1000th time, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. No matter your race or who you love or how much money you do or don't have, you are welcome here. Announcements. Adam?
All right, I will take over on the announcements and allow Asar some time to get into the wide shot here. Good morning. Announcements for this morning. Basically for today, just take a look at the back of your order of service. It gives you information. The thing you always want to think about whenever you come into service on Sunday morning is what's happening after the service, what's happening this week, and what's happening on next Sunday. So today we have fellowship hour. We will actually be in Hull Chapel rather than in Chrismore Parlor today, so kind of throwing it back to the old days of like, I don't know, a year ago. So we'll be in Hull Chapel just kind of dealing with some flexible spaces here today. And so that will be after the worship today. And then the women's group meeting will be at 1 p.m. on Zoom. You can also see this week, Monday, so tomorrow night, there's a humanist group meeting. Hank is in charge of that, so if you're interested, Hank, give a wave. And then on Wednesday, Good Life and Gamers, would you like to talk about it?
Yeah. This Wednesday, we have our monthly Good Life seminar with Reverend Dave, which is our ethics conversation group. It's like if you had a really good college class, but you didn't have any homework and nobody was going to judge you or grade you. So come for some discussion of what we might mean by the good life. And For the first time, we are going to have that going on simultaneously with our monthly game night. So you can bring the family, bring friends, you can kind of take your pick. Game night will be in Hall Chapel. Good Life Seminar will be in Chris Moore Parlor, 6 to 8 p.m. this Wednesday, and there will be dinner, so come on over.
Right. Great, and then to finish it out, I'm going to send you out of announcements with a real humdinger. You will notice in your order of service on the front page, the closing song is called Answering the Call of Love, but then as you go to open your hymnal, you will see Standing on the Side of Love. That is a change that the composer Jason Shelton agreed to with the Unitarian Universalist Hymn Commission. And so in order to remove the ableist language from the original, instead of singing Standing on the Side of Love, we will sing Answering the Call of Love. And so just keep that in mind as we sing, that wherever you see Standing on the Side, you will sing Answering the Call. I will say, if you happen to have a pencil and good penmanship and you feel so moved to change your teal hymnal wherever it may sit, it will save me time later. But this is the first time we've done it since I got that information. So just so you know, and we won't break the flow of service later, we will be singing Answering the Call of Love. All right. Thank you so much. Lynn, back to you.
Okay, now it is time to light our chalice. Oh, okay. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Our opening song this morning, you may follow along in your gray hymnal number 95, or you may simply sing it by rote. I'll sing it through once, and you can just join me as we go. This is 95 in the gray hymnal, There Is More Love Somewhere. And you can remain seated. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. Yeah, I hear it coming on. So this is all together, more love. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. More hope. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it.
morning. Oh, I'm speaking in two mics. That doesn't work. Let me adjust technically here. I'm the Reverend Alan Harden, and it's with great pleasure that I appear here at First U to lead worship. I speak here today as half of a pulpit swap. Right now, Reverend David is leading the service at my church, Beverly Unitarian, in the southwest side of Chicago. I was a member of this congregation for many years, as Lynn said, only leaving when I enrolled in seminary. I see many beloved friends here today and hold heavily in my heart those who no longer share breath with us. It always feels like homecoming to be here. And now to turn to the call to worship. And I'm going to start with a question. Did you all get copies of a poem with your orders of service? No. Well, that's unfortunate. The passage I'm going to read is from 1 Corinthians 13. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love.
Our centering hymn of today is in your gray hymnal. It's number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. That is number 34 in your gray hymnal. Please rise in body or spirit.
Sounding brass
At this point in our service, I would invite forward the young and young at heart who wish to spend a little moment with me and with my friend, Reverend Ellen.
Wow, you got lots of.
Thank you guys for joining us.
You can sit down if you want, Liz. If I do, I won't get up.
All right, yeah, I'll sit down with you guys. That sounds good.
Look at all these very special people who came up front.
Yeah, these are my friends, actually, and we know that each of us is special, right? I think that you guys all know that, and I think we all know that we're all a little bit different from each other as well, right? What are some of the ways that you guys are different from each other? I'm starting to think of some. Anybody have an idea of something that makes you unique? Some of us are more energetic than others. That's true. Our senses of style, absolutely. I see somebody has a dinosaur. That's cool. I know some people like sports. Some people play a lot of different sports. People have different talent. I think some of us, multiple of us, do tumbling. So yeah, there's a lot of special people up here. One more idea? Oh, okay. Some of us are little tricksters.
You guys are missing out. Fun is being had up here. And as much as they differ, they're also similar in many ways. Each like the other. I can see that. What are some of the ways that you're all the same? Go ahead. We're all people and we have identical twins who are even more alike than the others are alike. Did you hear that, Lynn?
Some of us have the same skin color as each other.
That's right. And let's see. And we all have hair. I don't, but you do. We have clothes.
You got a little bit there.
Little bit. And we all have parts, like heads, shoulders, knees, and toes. Let's not go there. And what? Tippy-tappy feet. Okay. All righty.
We see those things. We know that we all have like heads and hair and feet and stuff like that because we can see, and we can see what each other are wearing. We can hear what each other say. We can sometimes, especially with consent, we can touch each other, shake hands, hug. We could maybe sometimes we smell each other. We usually don't taste each other.
That would be tough.
Yeah, that would be weird.
I also think that people are alike and different on the inside, too.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that like when it comes to our bodies pretty much work in like a lot of similar ways. Maybe not exactly the same all the time, but pretty similar. Our bodies work, and we're definitely made up of like the same like stuff inside of us.
Stuff. Skin and cells.
Skin, cells, atoms.
And atoms. The stuff of stars. You're right. And we're also different because we each have our own personal feelings and thoughts. Like I love ice cream. Do you love ice cream? Yeah. Yes. Let me try this one. I also love spinach and broccoli.
I like broccoli. Steamed broccoli is the best.
I'm with you. I like broccoli. I could take or leave spinach.
There's some diversion of opinion up here. Okay, well, here's one thing. Do you know that we all have our bodies? Do you know that energy just passes and can pass through our bodies? Liz has...
I have something that helps us see that, actually. I have this special wand.
I want to see how this works. Who, do we have a volunteer? One person.
We'll get a bunch of different chances. Let's start with Kit and Holden. You can be second, and everyone can get a chance.
Everyone's going to get a chance. We can do this without ditching children. Now, what happens with that? Whoa! What's going on? If you hold it in the middle, nothing. If you hold it in one hand, nothing. If I hold that hand, let me see if I can make it go on that end. Nothing. Wow. What's going on is there's energy flowing through you. And when you touch both sides of that, you close the circuit. And the energy flows right into that toy.
That one annoying mosquito that's going around your room.
Okay, let's try it with a couple of the others here.
Hey, Holden, it's your turn.
Whoa.
I would
Okay.
love to see what happens.
There you go.
We're done.
I would love to let's see what happens if two of us do it together. Hey, Holden, would you hold hands with me? You want to help us?
Whoa, look at that. Now that's really important because not only does energy flow through one of us, when two of us hold hands, both hands, the same energy flows between two of us. Now, let's try something, guys. We need the wand back. All of you,
Thank
can you
you.
stand up and hold hands? Everybody hold hands except me. I'm holding myself up on a cane. Okay.
I'm going to let you do it so that I can hold the
Mic. Yeah,
the microphone.
just you guys. Now, put it
So
in.
everybody hold hand. We need to get in a circle so that we can see it. So we can
Everybody
do it.
hold hands.
Okay.
And we'll send this toy off later with you. Look at this. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people here, and it flows through all of them. What's important is to see that we are connected in ways that are real.
And if we
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just noticing that if we break the connection, then it stops. But if we can get back connected, then it keeps going.
And any one of you can break this connection. And all of you have to be together to remake it. Now, while we see here, what we know, this is an electric charge passing through all of us. But it shows how we're connected. And who knows what else passes through our bodies when we connect ourselves to one another. And here's a special secret. We won't make you do it right now, but it works on adults too. Okay.
Thank you all so much for helping us learn about this. And this will be around for us to, is it okay if we take this to class?
Sure.
We can play with this more in class. So we will send our children to their classes with our love, and our worship will continue. I invite you to warmly greet your neighbor.
Oh, offer try.
Before we move into our offertory, I have one quick announcement that I missed earlier. After the service, at our coffee hour, we will be writing letters for our Illinois prison inmate pen pal program. And so, John Herring, can you give a wave? He's our guy in charge of it. If you are interested in helping with that, one of the things that I tell the choir quite often is if you have one or two people doing something in a church, and it's a lot of work, then it becomes a job. But if everyone can do a little bit, it's like a 10-minute fellowship activity that everyone has a really good time with. And it's a very meaningful pen pal ministry that we have going. It's part of a larger operation that we're doing with UU Ministries. And so if you have the time during coffee hour, we will be signing those letters, writing those letters during coffee hour right up here, and John can give you more information after the service. Thank you.
So it's time for the, can you hear me? It's time for the offering. Sorry. Okay, it's time for our offering. This month, we are sharing our plate with the Greater Chicago Food Depository, that incredible organization that collects food and distributes it to some 800 pantries around the Chicago area. We want to make sure that people are not hungry any time of the year, but most especially in December. Thank you for your generosity, everyone.
There are virtues in ignorance. I have no idea how this congregation does joys and sorrows, but my understanding is that they're submitted ahead of time. And seeing as how none have been submitted, I will just say, let us hold in our hearts all of the things that you are bearing. As a congregation, our most important role is to sustain and care for one another, to bring warmth and safety when we gather, and to assist and care for each other in times of need and difficulty. I commend you for the ways you hold each other up. And I light this virtual candle for whatever concerns, joys, and sorrows you are holding in your heart. Now I ask you to assume a position of comfort. Find and follow your breath. And open yourself to whatever it is that you find that feeds your spirit. I will read a brief part of a poem from Archibald MacLeish, and then we will hold a few moments of silence. Love is a bird in a fist. To hold it hides it. To look at it lets it go. It will twist loose if you lift so much as a finger. It will stay if you cover it. Stay, but unknown and invisible. Either you keep it forever in a closed fist, or let it fling. Please relax and follow your breath for a few moments of silent prayer, meditation, or contemplation. Amen. fun to be back up here. Reverend Dave and I don't know each other really well, but I can guarantee that this feels consistent, that he would have brought back the high pulpit. That's the way he rolls. And I guess I shouldn't usually do this, but I will today. I'm going to start this sermon with an apology, just because it's a little long. And if you get bored, walk out. I won't be offended, or if you have to be somewhere. But my style of preaching, I've always worked in small, even smaller in this congregations. And I always preach directly to the people, to what we're doing now and then. And I'm not living with you guys these days. So I don't have my finger on the pulse. So I'm going to speak on a topic. And the topic is the poem I read earlier from First Corinthians in the New Testament. Chapter 13 of First Corinthians is one of the best known and most beloved writings in the Christian Bible. It's sometimes treated as one of the all-time great love poems. I imagine that more than one of us have used parts of this verse in our own lives, maybe in a wedding ceremony or for some occasion where we needed words to define or characterize love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love never ends. And I should note, in case some of you with deep traditional Christian backgrounds are a little confused, that this is from the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible and most of the newer versions. In the King James text, which some people hold as the only text, the word love doesn't appear. Instead, it shows up as charity. But these are both fairly reasonable translations of the Greek word agape, which they come from, which points to unconditional and transcendent love, which the Christians hold as God's love for us and our love for God, and thus also our love for one another. Others of us hold it a little differently than that. My interest in this poem, though, was piqued by the final line. Faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. Now this confused me, because the Apostle Paul, who was the author of this passage, is largely understood for holding salvation or justification by faith as essential to Christianity. And yet here he says that love is greater than faith or hope. And I personally like holding love above the others, but I was confused that Paul made this claim. And maybe you all, at first, you should care as well. When I went onto your website last week, I read a banner that said, Faith, Hope, and Love since 1836. Have you ever contemplated which of these three things best defines you? There's much about the production of the Bible and early Christian history that we just really don't know. And believe me, there's thousands of people arguing about it all the time. We know some things very simply. Like, for example, neither Matthew, Luke, Mark, or John wrote the gospel book that's attributed to them. But scholars do agree that Paul existed and that he did write this letter to the Christian assembly in Corinth. Paul is nominally the author of 14 books in the New Testament. Modern analysis says that probably about half of these were written by other people. Pseudo-Paul, we call them, who are using Paul's name probably just to gain some authority. And some of the nastiest things that are attributed to Paul were written by these other people. But Paul was not always a friendly guy. A little bit of background on him. As reported in the book of Acts, a man named Saul of Tarsus lived in the Holy Land during and after the times of Jesus. This Saul was a Pharisee, part of a group that practiced strict adherence to traditional Jewish teaching and law. The Pharisees were devout and rigid, and they were not typically thought of as warm and fuzzy guys. As such, Saul was unapologetically opposed to the spread of new Christian practices and engaged actively in the persecution of heretics who tried to introduce ideas about Jesus into the practice of Judaism. It's reported that Saul actually held the cloaks while a crowd of zealots stoned a man named Stephen to the death because he preached about Jesus. Saint Stephen thus became the first known Christian martyr. Saul was a pretty sanctimonious guy until he took the road to Damascus. The year was 34 or 35, and Saul was headed to Damascus to capture more Christian heretics in order to bring them to Jerusalem for trial and punishment. But before reaching Damascus, Saul experienced something. In the book of Acts again, in chapter 9, now as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He asked, "Who are you, Lord?" And the reply came, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what to do." Now, who knows what happened on that road to Damascus? But Saul believed he had met the risen and resurrected Jesus and immediately became a believer in Jesus and human salvation through Christ. Our newly converted Saul became known as Paul and developed into perhaps the most important Christian apostle, missionary, and theologian of his time. He traveled widely, founding new Christian congregations all the way from Syria to Rome. And he wrote a big part of the New Testament. Paul's works are mostly epistles or letters, instructing the persons in his congregations, and each is named by the town where the congregation resided, and thus they have funny titles like Thessalonians, Galatians, Corinthians, and Romans. Whoa. Excuse me. Paul was a Christian evangelist and was well aware of the gospel stories about the life, teachings, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus. But we must hold several pieces in context before we understand much more about Paul and his times, and I will highlight three of them. First, the books of the Bible that Paul wrote were written chronologically years before the very first New Testament books were written. He was the first. His epistles predate the Gospels. Mark, the first of these, was probably written 10 or 15 years later. So while Paul had access to the stories that related to the life of Jesus, he was less aware of the details that would later be sealed in the book as gospel. Paul was known to frequently instruct his followers to obey God's teachings as found in Scripture. Now, I first thought, how can he ask them to follow Christian Scripture when it hasn't been written yet? And the answer is very simple. He was asking them to follow the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, because that's all that had been written by them. Second, and very related, Paul, like Jesus, thought of himself as a Jew, and he considered the acceptance of Christ in the Christian message to be a reform element of Judaism, not a change of faith. Much of his work discusses how to blend both Jews and Gentiles into this changed faith. Most of the other apostles believed that only Jews or converts to Judaism should be able to become Christians. These persons wanted all followers to obey Jewish law, such as keeping a kosher diet or requiring male circumcision. Paul argued that while the Jews who accepted Christ needed to remain Jewish and continue to practice all Jewish laws, the Gentiles he was attracting could enter the blessing of the new Christian faith without conversion or taking on full Jewish practice. There's sort of a bifurcation going on. Third, and probably the most important of these facts, Paul expected that Judgment Day would accompany the second coming of Jesus, bringing on end times and a final reckoning. The faithful to God, those living and those already deceased, would join with God in heaven at this time. Paul saw an urgency for preparing for end times, or the eschaton, which he fully expected within his lifetime. The imminence of end times profoundly influences his vision of what Christianity should be. Salvation of souls was urgent, and he organized these new Christian assemblies to spread the message. Paul did not envision that he was building this church as an institution, something that happened a couple of hundred years later, because he believed it would be irrelevant after the second coming. We would all be with God. Paul frequently maintained that faith, accepting God in Christ, defines Christians. This is apparent in his opening to 1 Corinthians when he greets the members of his assembly as sanctified saints. I didn't do that this morning. I did not greet you all as sanctified saints. You're just all plain old everyday saints. But he had expectations for how the faithful should act. Paul's purpose in writing to the ecclesia, or church in Corinth, was to correct problems in their behavior that he had heard about through reports and letters. He knew of divisions and rivalries among members, widespread immorality, challenges to his authority and teachings, and questions about proper Christian conduct and worship. Of special concern was an increase in flagrant and demonstrative worship practices, including the boastful use of some spiritual gifts to gain status and create a pretense of being already with God in Christ. Acting out in church became a competitive thing in Corinth. Ecstatic speech, or speaking in tongues, is the gift most often selfishly exploited in this way by members of the ecclesia. When I read the poem today, it follows a discussion suggesting that a diversity of gifts should be used in worship, and it's immediately preceded by a teasing promise that Paul will show the Corinthians a still more excellent way. The entirety of chapter 13, the poem, is a textual anomaly. It's suggestive, it's poetic, and it's found in the middle of a bunch of sections that just teach and scold about how to behave in church. Interestingly, neither God nor Jesus is mentioned directly, although their influence in Paul is reflected throughout. Okay, this was a lot of introduction, but it sets us each in the place and mind of the Apostle Paul. Anyone, I was going to say there's a copy in your order of service. It appears that's not so. The first section, and I'm going to run through this fairly quickly, verses 1 to 3, directly addresses the pressing issue, the way many Corinthians were misusing spiritual gifts, such as speaking in tongues and prophecy or holding mystical knowledge. Paul is not opposed to using such gifts. These were the standard religious fare of his time. He even writes these lines in the first person to acknowledge his own involvement But he wants to clarify that gifts, these practices, are not the essence of Christianity, and that facility with a gift does not imply spiritual supremacy. Poorly grounded use of these gifts is selfish, unproductive, and creates false pride. By claiming that each of these gifts is nothing without love, Paul is arguing that these practices must be brought into a Christian ethical context, defined by a demonstrated love for all others. And may I remind you that love throughout this passage is a translation again of the Greek word agape, the love of all faithful derived from God, the love shown by the life and death of Jesus Christ. In their thinking, Paul claims that this love should be actively channeled into the way they live in a shared church community, and only with love can the practices of members be righteous and the church itself edified. Love is a virtue manifest in all actions. Excuse me, man, I gotta figure out where this mic is so I can clear my throat. I can't find it. There we go. I apologize. Paul goes on to describe the nature or character of love, and these are maybe the parts we hear most often. He gives a quick sequence of 15 attributes, 2 positives, patient and kind, followed by many negatives, not envious, not boastful, etc. It seems clear that these attributes are chosen in direct response to everything Paul feared about the wayward Corinthians. He stays on message by effectively scolding wrongdoers at the same time as he builds praise for love's character and value. He goes on to describe love more theologically, showing how love is related to all things with 2 present and eternal qualities, bearing and enduring, and 2 future-oriented qualities, belief and hope. He also mentions faith, hope, and love together once here before they appear at the end. In the third and final section, Paul explains that love is essential because it alone among the virtues is permanent and definitive of our relation to God. Spiritual gifts of prophecy, tongues, and knowledge are transient, but love never ends. In the present, we know God partially, like with a child's understanding, or is viewed in dim reflection. But when Jesus returns to earth and the second coming brings end times, then and only then, according to Paul, we shall come face to face with God, and at that time we shall know God fully. When this happens, all of the spiritual gifts, as well as faith and hope, will become obsolete and unnecessary, because the future they anticipate will become the new reality. We need spiritual gifts and virtues to relate to God in our present time. After the eschaton, we don't need them at all. And so the final line states, and now faith, hope, and love abide, these 3, and the greatest of these is love. Love remains apart because it's the foundation and reality of the eternal kingdom of God, both before and after end times. Thus, Paul claims that love is the greatest of Christian virtues. He knows that all 3, faith, hope, and love, are important in the present life of the church, but agape love, caring for each other and all of creation, is the peace of the eternal kingdom of God that a Christian can hold today and carry into the forever. So to help Corinthians see their shortcomings, Paul created an entirely new description of the Christian ethical framework. His new and more excellent way is to see our lives together as a realization of what he saw as God's love for us. In our current terminology, Paul's more excellent way might be described as beloved community, basing our relations with one another on caring, compassion, and love. Paul's framing the ultimate as a manifestation of sacred love creates a beautiful eschatology. This might sound familiar to those of us who followed recent changes in the Unitarian Universalist description of our own tradition. We now define 6 key values that we hold as formative to our faith: pluralism, transformation, justice, generosity, interdependence, and equity. But we emphasize that each of these is rooted in and sustained by love, which is central to our entire commitment to one another. As beautiful as the words and images of this dream may be, and as much as Paul's ideas resonate with me in some ways, I find his imagery very troubling. I resist the notion that our current commitment and relation with one another should be motivated and understood only in the context of a promise of salvation in an unknown future. In the year 50, Paul was preaching that the world of the Corinthians and all others would end within his lifetime. So all understanding of life purpose and sacred practice are formed within the frame of this simple assumption. The idea that the Christian faithful or the Jews or anyone can live their lives as if they're in a perfect place is quite attractive. But do we really need the carrot of salvation to motivate this? Is not beloved community on earth a sufficient goal, a complete dream? To me, heaven on earth is a stunning metaphor and a brilliant and prophetic aspiration. And maybe the timetable upsets me too. Today, 2,000 years after Paul wrote to the assembly in Corinth, many persons around the world still hold similar assumptions. We all know people who believe in an afterlife. Some of us probably believe in an afterlife, and who think in terms of salvation and damnation. Persons who find solace in the idea that their death will be a passing over to a better place where they might meet their Maker and be reunited with loved ones already lost. As much as these ideals feel foreign to me, I appreciate their power and then a way they can help people find strength, meaning, and comfort in their lives in this world. If I were to ask you how many of your friends believe in some form of afterlife, my guess is you would respond with a fairly high percentage. But let me ask a different question. How many Americans do you think anticipate Paul's eschaton, the end of times, the second coming, the rapture, within their lifetime? Not just an afterlife for those who die, but a reckoning and a judgment for those who live. Now, our info's a little old now, but the Pew Research people asked about this in 2010, and among white evangelical Christians in the United States, 58% believe that Jesus Christ will probably or definitely return to earth by the year 2050. And 41% of all Americans believe that the second coming is not only real, but that it's going to happen in their lifetime. This adds up to about 100 million people. And things might have changed in the last 15 years, but that's a lot. Apocalyptic thought is prominent in many circles and has deep ramifications in the attempts of some to bring Christianity explicitly into American public life and government. Check out our House Speaker, Mike Johnson, and his acceptance of the 7 Mountain Mandate. And if that doesn't ring a bell to you, you should look up 7 Mountain Mandate. Or many who support the cause of the Jewish state in Israel only because they believe that it's an essential precondition for the return of Christ and the onset of end times. If you believe that the world as we know it will end during our lifetime and that there will be reckoning and judgment, would that change the way you choose to live and the way you decide to evaluate purpose and meaning in your own life? My guess is that you might worry a lot about the criteria to be used for judgment and not so much about many other things. Expecting end times in itself will not make you a better or a worse person, but it would surely shift your worldview, your priorities, your values, and your ethical standards. Expecting end times in the near future would affect anyone's long-term view of their world. Climate change, global warming, population growth, those things would seem unimportant. This belief gap regarding future expectations can be seen as a competition between prophecies. None of us knows the future, but we must remain aware that many of our neighbors are not deeply concerned about our earthly future because it will be eclipsed by apocalyptic change. My personal prophecy, in contrast, holds that we all share one chance to survive as a species on this earth, and that we want to live into our future in ways that sustain and support ourselves, and that our future may last for millennia only if we are wise and cautious. And while my aspirations are filled with hope and optimism, my prophecy is tempered with real fear and concern. We need to do a good enough job of caretaking in the present to compensate for those who feel that earthly threats to our continuation are irrelevant. Why would you get worked up when end times are due? Paul viewed love as a reason for and the end point of a Christian life. Love is sacred, love is holy, and it is this way on its own terms. It is the outward sign of the relationship he saw between God and humanity as taught by Jesus. Living in love in this life is one way we can make ourselves ready for the next. This reading of the Gospels and the Christian faith pretty much works for me. I just wish that more Christians would accept this message, the message of love, as centering the truth of their faith. One way my ideas do diverge from Paul's is in how we understand the source of love. Paul holds that love is a manifestation of our connection to God and godly life. I know love is something built between people. Love is the bond, the connection, and the only power that can guide or sustain us as we work to create our own version of beloved community. Love might travel along those electric lines that light up the little thingy the kids were playing with, but whatever it is, I know we're connected and that it matters. Love is created by us. Love is a fierce necessity for us. And love is our best and surest weapon as we fight to create our own holy, our own sacred, our place of belonging and purpose. May we go forth in purpose and in love, for it is holy work that we do. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
Our closing song will be Answering the Call of Love. That is number 1014 in the teal hymnal. We will be singing verses 1 and 2. Please rise in body or spirit for the singing. So every soul is blessed, be
how well we live, and it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love. And from Alice Walker, love, if it is love, never goes away. It is embedded in us like seams of gold and